Alexandra is the founder and CEO of TechED. TechED is an organization that is in Lebanon, is a learning experience design enterprise, nurturing 21st century skills and mindset transformation for talent development. She's an international public speaker. She's a consultant and author of recipient. She's also a recipient of the Alain Decaux Literary Prize. Alexandra has been recognized as a MENA Leadership Academy Fellow of 2016-17, G20 Young Global Changer 2017 and 2021, Unleash Global Talent 2018, and UNESCO APCEIU Youth Leader 2019. And as the connection creator, she explores the breadth and depth of multidisciplinary retail, putting connection at the service of innovation and self-actualization to reinvent the ways in which we think, learn, and the way we work. So she will be talking about the mental map of resilience for educators. Thank you, Alexandra. It's good to have you here today. Over to you.
First of all, thank you, Stephen, for having me today. Thank you, speakers, for your amazing energy. Goto, it's lovely to see you after 2019 Korea conference. And it's a pleasure really to get the chance to meet with you, to have a conversation. Many of the ideas that were shared by previous speakers, I'm going to come close to them, and you're going to see how these ideas somewhat intersect. But we are going to have a kind of a parenthesis, or a kind of, we're going to go away from the topic of pure ethics, and we're going to wander off in the realm of the mind and the mindset. And then we're going to come back to ethics. So we're going to go on a small adventure. I will be sharing my screen now. I hope you can see it. And what I would like to talk to you about is personal experience I had to go through in Lebanon. I feel that it puts us in a situation closer in terms of experiences and challenges, and that all allow me to reflect on resilience and anti-fragility. So before we start, just a few points to consider: that if I disappear, don't worry, I'll be back in 57 seconds. It means that I had a power cut. And if you hear some kind of a nosy beep, 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 beep in the background, don't worry, nothing's about to explode. It's just the backup power. Oh, the electricity is back. It's just the power and the generator and the stabilizer, all of them working together to make sure that I'm here with you today. So when you live in a place where there's so much uncertainty and instability, including the electrical power, one, you become an electricity expert without even wanting to become one. And two, you start to find creative solution about things. So a bit about the context in Lebanon and why we're having these crises. Lebanon is currently going through one of the most intractable political deadlocks and economic collapses that put us in the top 3 or 5 countries when it comes to hyperinflation, alongside Venezuela and Zimbabwe. We have today, I think we're up to 92.3% in devaluation. Inflation rate reached more than 650% in some cases. And private banks have installed severe capital control on people's savings. And most of the people who are suffering from it are just random citizens. And all of that, of course, was added on what we were all going through, which is the COVID-19 crisis. And then this picture you can see is from August 4, 2020, with the Beirut port explosion, presumably the 3rd biggest non-nuclear explosion in history. 200 people died, 8,000 were injured, 200,000 were displaced, and that only, obviously, worsened the situation. And that was a struggle. That was a deep, profound struggle. It was undesired, it was unwanted, it was unwelcome, but it was also the birthplace of possibility. It was an instigator of growth. It was a shaper of leadership. And what happened in 2020, in the midst of all that, is that I had the chance, the beautiful chance, to collaborate with more than 88 organizations and leading figures in education from 29 plus countries. Together, we reached thousands of people across the world, and that would have never been possible without the digital transformation of COVID-19, and without the feel that as individuals, as human beings, we need to support one another. But the real question is, when we're in a situation of extreme chaos, complete chaos, and I believe you've felt that, you've seen that, how can we reflect back on our experience and draw a mental map of resilience? This is the question that I was obsessing over since 2020, and I ended up with 4 key insights that I felt I wanted to share with you today. And the first one in this mental map of resilience, is the mind. And when it comes to the mind, the first thing that I realized is extremely important is to think like an engineer. You know, here's an interesting story. When the first 3 SpaceX rockets were just exploding in the sky, and obviously that's a lot of money that was turned into the design of these rockets. Elon Musk's mother, so May Musk, felt like just curling in a corner, and that should have been Elon's reaction. That was his project, but his reaction was, "Oh, now we know what went wrong. We'll do it right the next time." And that is amazing. The ability to streamline the process, to understand what works, what doesn't work. And this is very much aligned with what Anastasia said about the need to implement meaningful edtech. We understand the meaning of meaningful edtech when we understand the type of problems that we have and how we need to solve them. And in order to do that, it is crucial for us to be able to think like engineers, to be able to streamline the process from the point A to point Z, and to understand at what moment in time do we have a problem and how can we fix that problem. So the first element is that we need to see, to understand, to critically question the different parts of the system, from the educational system, from the infrastructure system, and so on and so forth. The second important element, which I personally love, and I'm sure that that would be Tesla's favorite, which is visualization. And Tesla was an incredible person when it comes to visualization, because he was capable of seeing the system, how it works, the product, how it works, with full precision. And when we have that kind of clarity, so I love what was shared in the interventions earlier now, because it seems that there is clarity over what is it that we need to do. And when we have that kind of clarity, we can move forward with it. When it comes to the type of edtech that we can use and how we can use them, having clarity over how that works is also very important. But then there's something very important we need to understand about how engineers work, is that they don't get it right every single time. The process that we need to go through as engineers, but also as entrepreneurs, is that we need to go through trial and error. We have to fail and fail more and fail better, and eventually figure out what works and what doesn't work. And this is where testing and improving is important. And I hope that the past year and a half was a good ground for us to test things, test different things, see what works, what doesn't work, understand, and based on that, know what kind of solution we can propose and know what kind of solutions we can implement. So what I realize is that when things around us are uncertain, difficult, challenging, when everything around us is dysfunctional, when we sit down and look and it's like, oh my God, what is happening in the world today? We need to take a step back and see things with the eyes of an engineer, understand the problem, come up with alternative realities, visualize them, test them, and improve them on the go. But in order to do that, in order to have that kind of clarity, we need something else. We cannot have a clear mind if at the beginning we don't have a clear heart. And what do I mean by that? By that, I mean that we need to think like artists. Okay, that's even weirder. An artist is a person at the end of the day who creates. And that's one of the most fundamental aspects of the definition. So be it a painter, a sculptor, a writer, a film director, whoever that is, at the core of the artist's work is the process of creation, whatever its form may be. And art is a process of meaningful and beautiful transformation, at the center of which beats the human heart that strives to express itself, to express its identity, and to imagine and deliver something. So from what appears to be void, to be chaotic, an artist extracts an energy that becomes a presence. From what tool we can create a masterpiece. From even a very simple tool, we can create something that ends up being a masterpiece. And in order to do that, we need to understand that chaos is part of the process. And we need to love chaos as being a phase that would allow us to emerge with something different, something unique, something that is close to a masterpiece. And I remember back in 2013, I was in France. I visited Paul Cézanne's studio in the Provence, in southern part of France. And it was just a very small room with a very tall glass window. It was looking north, and there were skulls, and there were brushes, and there was a coat that was hanging with a hat. And you felt as if Cézanne was like going into the room at any moment in time, grab his hat, and just go and do something. But you look, and this was a museum, obviously, but it was so chaotic. A museum is supposed to be organized. When you walk into, for instance, a national museum, you have everything organized. You have the glasses, and you have the labels, and everything is super organized. But his studio wasn't. His studio was a complete mess. And it is in that studio that he was capable of painting all the things that became legendary in terms of art. They became part of art's classic history. So in that mess, where everything is chaotic around us, the possibilities can emerge. And this is where innovation comes in. When we understand that everything around us is chaotic, and when we accept that chaos is part of the process, and when we activate the eyes of an engineer to find the problems and solve the problems, we can combine all of that and reach a higher level of innovation. And in order to do that, we need to be present in the moment. This is what the artist does. The artist basically is present in the moment. We need to give room to imagination. Take moments to think, okay, if I don't do it like this, how can I do it? How else is it possible to be done? What more can be done? And imagination is a crucial part of the artist's work. And only then we can allow ourselves to create a first draft. And the first draft as artist, which is equivalent to the first experience, educational experience, new educational experience as educator, is probably going to be a mess. It might be a failure. But it will tell us what are the things that we need to work on, what are the things that we can actually continue implementing because they're absolutely amazing. And that is very important. So we need to understand the mess, we need to accept the mistakes, and we need to create a new masterpiece. And this is, and here I'm going to go back to the first speech with Rosario, where you did the comparison between education and marketing. And it's curious because I wanted to share with you one element from marketing that is very relevant and that explains why mistakes are so important. So what sometimes happen in marketing campaigns is that they send this apology email. And the open rate usually for these apology emails, there are different tests that ended up with different results, but it ranges from 66% to 85%, knowing that perhaps the average open rate of a newsletter is like, I don't know, 10%. This is huge. Why is it so high? Because making mistake makes you human. So as teachers, as educators, it's just, it makes you who you are, it makes you human. And as long as you're accountable to the things that you do, to the mistakes that you do, and try to fix them, try to make them better, then this would put you in a situation where, okay, I respect my teacher as a student because of all the things that they're doing, because of all the things that they're doing for me. And creating that connection, creating that connect between the teacher and the student at that level allows the student to want to do more, to want to perform better. And when we have that upon a layer of more access, upon a layer of a better structure, upon a layer of better tools, you can only see how much more it's possible for them to achieve in their life. So we have the mind with the engineer, we have the heart with the artist, and then we have the body. And when I talk about the body, I mean the body of an athlete. I don't mean that you need to go to the gym tomorrow. Of course, it's very healthy to go to the gym, but that's not what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that an athlete is someone who knows, understands how his systems work, or her system, because an athlete will also be an amazing young lady. But what I first want to tap into is the power of practice. Athletes practice like crazy. Just going to give the example of Kobe Bryant. He is known to have something that is called a killer routine, because it's a killer routine, because he practices relentlessly every day, even when out of season. There is a practice shots there. He has lift weight, he has to lift weights, he has to work on his cardio, and he does that all the time. So practice is very important, but what is more important is to go away from blind practice, i.e. to repeat the same thing over and over and over again, because we've been doing that for the past 500 years. So if we do that over and over again, we're not going to go anywhere. That's blind practice, and we're not going to be able to reach the highest level of athletic achievement. So effective practice requires awareness. It requires mindfulness. We need to lose ourselves in the work, but we also need to be very aware of what it is that we're trying to do and try to achieve. So by being aware of all the steps that we're doing, we can also be more aware of the problems when they arise and how to solve them when it comes to anything else. The second element, which is very important, is recovery. So you probably have heard of this before. Athletes, I think that the quote was, athletes work hard on their training, but they work harder on their recovery, or something like that. And what happens usually after a break, after an injury, after a COVID pandemic, an athlete knows that the comeback is going to be hard, and possibly harder than anything that he had ever done before, or she had to do before. But an athlete also knows that there's a deep voice inside that says, I can do this. I have the ability to do this. And as teachers, because of the chaos, because of the pandemic, because of the uncertainty, because of the lack of infrastructure, sometimes we ask ourselves, but how can I make it work? How can I make it happen? And the question is to follow the voice of the athlete in recovery mode. I can do this. And in order to do this, you need to have an anchor. And here I'm also going to come back to what Anastasia said about having a community, going, networking, joining groups of people, coming to Stephen's TechED Summit. It's important to do that because that gives an anchor, and the anchor gives stability, and stability allows you to keep your balance, and your balance is important for you to be able to perform at your absolute best. And so anchor is extremely, extremely important. And the fourth element, which is my personal favorite, because my motto in life is connect the dots, and Persed's motto in life is connect the learning dots. You see a pattern here. Connecting the dots is perhaps the epitome of what living in the 21st century means. Everything is a network. This Zoom environment is a network. We come from different countries, from different backgrounds. We're connected. In the same way that, for instance, Wikipedia works, or any digital encyclopedia works. So when you go into such a page, you don't enter a house, you enter into a use. If it's XR, you enter in a metaverse. If, for instance, you go on Wikipedia and you search for creativity, you're going to see that the first, I think, 2 or 3 sentences, the first paragraph, basically, it's made of 7 links that are connected to other ideas. The entire page has around 400 plus links connected to external websites, and more than 1,600-700 links connected to other pages inside the digital encyclopedia. That's a lot of connections. That's a lot of connections. And that means that wherever you go, there is no dead end, because we're not in a model that is linear. We're not in the model that is much like the encyclopedia that we used to have before, where you have to go through A to B to C to D and so on and so forth. You have to go to the you have to agonize, and then you have to go through harrowing hurt and pinching pain in order to get to the R of resilience and rebirth, and all of the things that you look for. You just search for them directly and you find them. So the first thing that we need to understand is that we're not isolated. We're not isolated socially. We're not isolated from the perspective of information. We're not isolated from the perspective of solutions. The moment we start to build networks and relationships and contacts, with the moment we expose ourselves to all these resources that could potentially be made available to us, this is where we can start to leverage the things that we do on a day-to-day basis as educators, as teachers. From a tech perspective and from a mindset perspective, because we need both in order to make room for innovation. Non-linearity is the rule. Things are very sparse, but they're also very connected. And once we observe things, once we understand things from a systems perspective, that what I do is affecting what another person is doing, and what the government does, and what organizations do, and what many teachers in my area do. When we start to understand how we belong inside of systems, we start to create new dynamics. And these dynamics can leverage the power of innovation and tech and so on and so forth. And that's limitless. That offers, there are no limitations to the opportunities that can arise from connecting the dots, because everything is connected to everything else, and therefore any path is possible. And that's the beauty of it. So when we start to explore all the possibilities, all the futures, all the quantum futures, and when we start to think laterally instead of linearly, we start to understand that whatever the situation is, we can find a solution, we can find a path, and we can go in that direction. Of course, I go back to the idea that this needs trials and errors, but this also builds the resilience muscle. We can do so much more when we tap into the power of collective wisdom, when we tap into the power of our networks. And these four key ideas, they belong to the mental map of resilience. And the purpose of this mental map is to fight something that is called the VUCA. If you've heard of the VUCA model, feel free to share in the chat box. The V is the V of volatility. The U is the U of uncertainty. The C is the C of complexity. And the A is the A of ambiguity. And if we want to have a clear mindset that allows us to tap into the power of EdTech, to navigate through technology, to harness the power of technology in order to reach maximum innovation wherever we are and whatever the conditions are, we need to face volatility with anchor. We need to have an anchor. It could be an activity, it could be people, it could be a network, it could be a habit, it could be a mentor that you have, anything that works for you. If we want to fight uncertainty, then in this case, we need a heart that is open to possibilities. Imagine if you were born and you knew exactly what was going to happen for the 80 years of your life. How boring is that? How crushing is that? Knowing exactly what's going to happen tomorrow? Ew, no, I don't want that. Because it means that nothing other than that is possible. As we thrive when there are possibilities. So when we fight uncertainty with this openness to what's possible, when we tap into the power of imagination and determination, this is where we can transform everything that we go through into something different and new. And then there's complexity. And to deal with complexity, this is where we need the observant, analytical, critical mind of an engineer. We need to tackle the problem systemically, one issue at a time, one problem at a time, one challenge at a time. Come up with ideas, test them, see what works, what doesn't work, and based on that, implement the right course of action within a context. And last but not least, when everything is ambiguous and it's not clear, and it's like you're wearing glasses, but the glasses are not transparent and you can't really see what's around you. Well, first of all, you need to remove the glasses or clean them, obviously. But then the second thing that you need to do is connect the dots. When we start to see how these dots can connect to one another, how one person can help another, how one situation can improve another, how we can all support each other, how an idea that is implemented in Kenya is also relevant for Liberia, but it's also relevant for Lebanon, but can also inspire people in whatever in the world that is. This is where we can start to think beyond what we have and think with what could be. And that is crucial. That is a crucial transition from a mindset perspective in order to go away from what we know and create what we don't know, create all the things that can be. So these are the few thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I call it a neuroplastic system for relentless creation because it steals from neuroplasticity from the neuroscience field. It's a system because it's composed of different elements that interact with one another, that follow a certain dynamic, and that dynamic can change. Relentless because we need to be relentless. We need to fight the things, the challenges that come in front of us, and they will come. And this is a process of creation. This is a process of constant creation. And that is the beauty of it. And once we embrace this neuroplastic system for relentless creation, anything is possible. I'm open to questions. I'm also open to keeping this conversation going wherever it is, on LinkedIn, on email, on website, on social media, through Stephen, wherever that is. And yeah, so I'm open to questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Alexandra. Thank you for that melting pot of ideas, for inviting us to different realms and just localizing the ideas. Thank you so much. Personally, I really enjoyed that presentation. And I know that the conversation, like you already indicated, the conversations will continue. And I'm inviting everyone to just use the chat box while I invite the next speaker because our time